Hello, everybody, and welcome to something brand new and a little bit different. The dawn of a new championship on Monday. The Challenge Cup, three different cars, and only the drivers know what it's going to be like for race one. Hello, I'm Jesse Lee, joined by John Dalton in the box with Ryan Mawson behind the cameras today. John, three brand new cars just added to ACC a few weeks ago on display here. The Challenge Cup going to be very interesting, particularly because though the Porsche and the Lamborghini are similar on pace, at least around Spa anyway, we don't know which one actually will emerge victorious today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see this one, Jesse. It's something a little bit different. Don't normally see a multi-class event where everybody's competing for overall position instead of kind of divided up into their classes. We've got some very close times at the top between a couple of Porsches and a couple of Lamborghinis. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out on top. And there is a Ferrari in the field, I've been told. So I'm excited to see what that's going to do in a straight line. Obviously at Spa, mainly being straight lines, it's going to be very interesting to see that thing blast past everything on the straight and then struggle to stop for the corner and get overtaken by absolutely everything again. So yeah, very excited for this one. Something a little bit different. So yeah, excited to see what tonight brings.
To John's point, we mentioned, or to John's point, he did mention that a lot of these cars, two of them anyway, the Porsche and the Lamborghini, very close on pace. We'll get into the technical bits of these cars a little bit later on, but for right now, there is an overall championship, and as far as I'm aware, there is an individual championship as well. This is the top split, only pro qualified cars in the top split. There are a ton of them here, enough to fill up the already quite large Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. And we have several splits going on this evening. The response to the Challenge Cup was almost overwhelming.
Brilliant to see a big grid like this, Jesse, especially for the opening round. Hopefully it continues through the season. You're going to have battles aplenty. A lot of big names in the field that I was commentating on the Asia Masters, so great to see people coming back. But now again, we don't have the silver and the pro like we did in Asia Masters. Everything is for pro, so you're going to see these guys fighting probably a lot harder than they did the last time we saw them out.
Well, of course, the Monday champ, a lot of people race on Monday because it's the day they can race, so a lot of familiar names as well. Let's get into the cars a little bit. Let's go ahead and start with the Porsche Cup. It's a updated version of the Porsche Cup we already had. We'll call it the Porsche Cup Mark II. I think it has an official name, and that's not it. But a couple of differences with this Porsche Cup. Most of the drivers say that it's a lot more compliant than the previous Porsche Cup. It has a little bit less of an edge on it, which means you can get after it all the harder.
Certainly a great car, Jesse. I drove it a couple of weeks ago in the RCI 9 Hours of Alton Park with familiar friend Tom Pottage. And yeah, it's definitely a lot more agile in corners than the 991 used to be. Obviously a slightly revised aero balance on this car with a swan neck kind of type wing on the back of it. Providing some great rear end stability, but again, no TC and only a basic ABS system, so it's very easy to lose the rear end coming out of slow corners. Obviously turn one, very slow hairpin, could be interesting seeing a few guys getting the power down too early there, could lose the back end, spin them to the inside, could be a little bit of chaos in the start, but providing they get it in check, should be some very close racing between the Porsche guys.
It should be as well. Of course, normally Monday is Porsche Cup Day, and it still technically is the biggest class by far, the Porsche Cup cars here today. Benjamin Heilman went to the top of the heap here in practice near the end, a 20.085. That man loves him a Porsche, and he loves him some Spa as well. No surprise there. And of course, the 992 GT3 Cup car is the official designation of that Porsche. An update of the 991, like Mr. Dalton said. Let's move on to the Lamborghini Huracan ST, that the Evo 2 of that car. Any major differences, John, that you've noticed with the new Huracan ST?
other than the absolutely mad aero package it's now running with, fins, diffusers, canards, wings everywhere. Yeah, certainly a very different looking car to the original Lambo ST that we did see in the game. Personally, I've driven it for a very short stint. Drives kind of very similar to the Cup car in essence, with the aero balance through corners, although obviously a little less tail happy with the TC system on that one to make it a little bit more beginner friendly. But overall, a great car. Have enjoyed driving it. But yeah, excited to see how this races. I've not yet seen it in a race, so it's going to be a learning curve for me.
For me, driving the new ST, I struggle to differentiate it from a GT3 car. It's not quite as quick in some respects, but it drives almost like a GT3, perhaps just a little bit slower than, and an absolute treat. Was the surprise to me of this new Challenger DLC, which is where all these cars come from, was the Lamborghini and how it drove. And I just had so much confidence driving this car. Then again, I didn't take it off any big curbs. I think you'll see that here today, and you'll see just how well that car copes with banging off some of these gigantic curbs. Well, there is a third car in today's race, and I mean third car. It wasn't meant to be that way, but Joe McCauley, the lone Ferrari challenge car, and oh boy, where do we get started with that one, John?
Absolutely mental in a straight line, has none of the brakes and not really a lot of cornering ability. So watching it in real life series, it's quite easy to see how the inexperienced drivers in that cup manage to spin out and crash into each other all the time. Because I nearly did the same in some testing with Alex from OVRC. But absolutely mental in a straight line, so I'm excited to see what this thing can do compared to the Porsche Cup cars and the Lamborghinis, because you're going to probably see from turn 1 up to the top of the Camel Straight the Ferrari succeed versus the slightly draggier Lamborghini and Porsche with a little less power in those two cars than the Ferrari. And then through sectors 2 and 3, you're probably going to see the Ferrari go slightly backwards until it gets to the start-finish line, when it's going to go forwards again. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one to see how Anne Ferrari performs in this grid.
Well, it's a very good point. There were meant to be more than that. Wolf Matuszka also qualified in pro with his time for that car, but unable to make tonight's race, meaning that Joe McCauley gets a free W as long as they complete 80% of this race. If they don't complete 80% of this race, that whole category is forfeit for tonight. But of course, the overarching overall championship as well at play. How far up will Joe get in lap 1? We've got a lot of data for this race, but we don't actually know practically what they'll do in a race of this magnitude. Just look how many different Skittle-colored cars are on the right-hand side of your screen on the map. That also denotes what category they're in, and also if they're on a valid lap or not. If it's sort of that bluish turquoise color, it means they're not on a valid lap. And it's just going to be one of those things we're going to have to play it by ear. We're learning, as all the drivers are, how all these classes are going to interact with one another. My only takeaway from the Ferrari Challenge car was it didn't feel that different to me than some of the American stuff that I've been driving in simulators for a very long time. You mean to tell me it has way too much power and can't turn? That sounds awfully familiar to me for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why, Jesse. Maybe it's the typical stereotype that the American machinery tends to get with, the massive V8 engines in the front of them, all of the straight line speeds and none of the brakes and none of the suspensions go with it. So maybe very similar in an aspect of that. But yeah, super quick in a straight line, very oversteery as well. So you're going to try and want to minimise that over the course of, I presume it's an hour's race tonight. On that one, you don't want to wear your rear tyres too much. Could spell disaster towards the end of the race. Obviously, if you go forwards completely throughout the whole grid, and then towards the end, you're going to start going backwards again. So tyre management's definitely going to be a thing here today. Temperatures looking really hot in practice and qualifying. So if this carries over to the race, we could see some drivers nursing some tyres towards the end of the race.
Nico Kempu held the quick lap for just a moment, and then Benjamin Heilman, a 2-minute 20 for that driver, goes immediately to the top of the board. That's a 20.022. That is oh so close to flirting with a 20, or with a 19 rather. That is absolutely rapid pace. With we could get down into the 19s as the grid starts to file through and some of the lap times get filed in. Herrera in the 3:14 sets the second quickest lap, 3/10 off. Oh, actually, excuse me now. That's the 40 car, 40 Porsche that has the quickest lap. That's the car that did the 20.022.
There's certainly some very quick times coming in from these mere cup cars. I mean, in comparison to GT3 times, certainly probably not far off my best time. So I'm feeling slightly embarrassed, and I might need to get some more practice under my belt at Spa to pull away from these guys if we ever do a multi-class race there.
Polyakov there set the quickest lap, and then immediately at the top of the hill saw a car head into the wall. That is going to be common here in the rest of this qualifying session with so many pole or pro cars. You're definitely going to see that, and fortunately for them, trouble did not find them as that did not really interfere with their lap. Their fastest car, Benjamin Heilman, the Cork 796, looking to do some damage. It wouldn't be a Porsche Championship without having old Benjamin Heilman in it.
They raced Benjamin Heilman at the weekend at Alton Park. Him and his team super quick. Me and Tom could not even get near them on raw outright pace over stints, so they just pulled away into the distance. So excited to see what Benjamin can do here. He is up on this lap by quite a large margin, looking at the timing board, coming through Blancheron and into the bus stop. Massive braking area here, trying to get it slowed down for the right hand side, get it turned in over the giant sausage curb there, flick it left, jumping over the next curb, running it all the way out to the AstroTurf. Not too wide though, very easy to invalidate your lap, and Heilman goes up to P2 on that one. So again, Benjamin looking very quick here today, top of the time in practice, and is fighting near the top end in qualifying.
Sure is. Moreira now back to P3, looking to improve on their time. And what about Ostrich here in the 444? They were one of the quickest cars in practice, looking to get back up there. In fact, Adam Dubil, the quickest Lamborghini ST of the group. Ostrich just now falling outside the top 10 as qualifying continues. The tires get up to pressure, and of course the lap times will certainly continue to come down. I don't think a 19 is out of the question here.
I wouldn't say so. You know, the number 40 is knocking on the door of the 19, so again, if Heilman gets out, gets another few laps under his belt, I reckon Benjamin could be the one to break it. These cars, quite tricky. No tyre warmers straight out of the pits, so you do start with stone cold tyres and stone cold pressures. So it does keep a little longer to get these up to temperature. So you're probably looking at running a few more laps than average than you usually would in a GT3 that does have tyre warmers, just to get those laps in the pressure tyres up. You know, first few laps, want to take it a little bit easy, ease the tyres in, and then as soon as they hit the 26s, 27s, really start pushing and drilling some laps in. So you'll probably find these guys are a little bit overfueled for what would be a normal qualifying session, but obviously you do want to go that little bit longer here. As we watch P5 here come through the chicane, the 119. Is he going to improve as he comes over the line? Does indeed go up to P3. Say not broken the 219s yet, but still a little while to go yet.
20.2 getting ever closer to that mark. Polyakov in the number 40. Oh, a little bit of twitch there in the 991. That would have been almost certain death, but that lap forfeited anyway. The fact that they were able to save that regardless was magnificent to me, because I just feel like in the old 991, that would have been gone before you even got to the curve.
Yeah, the old 991 was a little bit deathly from my experience that I had in it. We did do the 12 hours of Silverstone, me and Tom Pottage again, duoed that. So yeah, definitely a hard car to drive for a long period. The 992 we found a little bit more forgiving at Alton, a little bit easier to catch slides, a little bit more progressive on the slides as well, so it wouldn't just kind of like bite out and you know, take you out completely. As we watch Klaus Neering here, common face, I've commentated a lot, coming across the line, up on his Delta, goes up to P6, so big improvement there for Klaus. Very quick driver. I'm excited to see what he can do in the Porsche. Again, Asia Masters, he was always towards the front end of the field.
Sure was, and you can never count Klaus out of any race. We certainly had over the years some fantastic races with Nyring in them and being a part of those really big moments. And today, the start, like we said, we know just as much as the drivers at this point. We've done some testing. We've seen their lap times in the pre-Q sessions, and there's been some smaller races as well since the Challenger DLC released. But I don't think there has been a race that has had this many cars around this sort of racetrack on it. So this is venturing off into something completely different for almost everybody.
Certainly so. It's not something I can say I've competed in a lot, other than the 12 Hours of Silverstone that RCI hosted, I believe, last year, when we took the Lamborghini GT3 and also the old Lamborghini, the old Cup car, and GT4. That created a very good mix, very messy at times. So let's hope that turn 1, touch wood, goes without saying, as big slide through on there for the 296. Well held. As I was saying about it being very progressive, you can really feel when the back end starts to step, and you can really wrestle the steering wheel and fight this car. Hoping to do a lot more seat time in it. I'm really enjoying the 992.
Angelina Stroza nearly losing it there, but again, that's the thing. The 992, the new Evo of the GT3 Cup car, you can get away with a little bit more. You can drive it a bit more aggressively, and also, too, when you mess it up a little bit, it isn't the end of the world. And all that does is make the lap times fall away. Of course, there's probably some really nice technical innovations for the 992 as well that we're not privy to, but either way, a little bit of a slide like that would have been deadly in the previous championship. Not a big deal. Might still be up on a quicker lap. Is Angel in that car. Everybody fighting over top 10 real estate. Adalbert Ertan, one of those drivers, already in the top 10, looking to improve their standing. How far up will that get them? Just the one spot, but hey, an improvement is an improvement, and that puts them on the other side of that row of the grid of 20.455. The times absolutely coming down. The thing that I'm curious about is, where's our Ferrari at? Where is he?
Apparently not seeing Joe McCauley anywhere near the top 26, as we see down the left-hand side of the screen there, with Andy Boardman at the bottom. Joe McCauley currently residing in P38, with another few names down the bottom that I'm not expecting, such as Christopher Verstappen, our Asian Masters champion from last season, right down the bottom at P37, so he's going to have a lot to do. He's going to have to get a lap in fairly soonish on this one that's going to drag him right up to the top. Maybe not used to the 992 as we ride aboard here with the rocket ship that is Joe McCauley, heading into Ronchemont. A little bit of a dab of the brakes, I think, for the Ferrari going into there. Saw the nose dip slightly, heading up to the bus stop in 7th gear. A bit rare for a GT car to have 7 gears, not many of them on the field. See Joe there in 3rd gear through the bus stop, absolutely unheard of in a GT3 car. Normally you'd be in 1st or 2nd. As he comes across the line, Joe McCauley up to P33, so dragged himself forward a little bit. Not as far forward as we'd like to see from Joe, but again, we know he has very raw, consistent pace in a race. So although these guys can pull this stuff over one lap, can they keep it up for the whole hour? Going to be interesting to see as the rocket ship heads down towards the Eau Rouge section here, over to the left, over to the right, straighten the wheel up as you come over the rise. Try not to cut the inside too much. Again, 6th gear, hitting 7th gear here. Very fast section on the circuit. Probably where we're going to see the Ferrari achieve most of its positions on the opening lap, I would say. I'm very excited to see how this car goes. Look at the speed! Crazy speed. But then you've got to brake so early just to get turned in, as we saw Joe there missing the apex at the top of the Kevin straight. Braking a little bit too late, just dragging himself a little bit wide. But yeah, it's going to be a very exciting race to see this rocket ship propel itself forward.
Well, Joe McCauley is no stranger to making things interesting. To see him go 3, 4, maybe even 5 wide down the straight will not be unheard of, and especially in a car like that. That was 279 Ks down that straightaway. Ridiculous.
Absolutely bonkers speeds. As looking to the top of the timing board, Benjamin Harmon has broken the 19 barrier. Only just, but he has managed to get himself into the 19s. I'm going to see probably the number 40 make a big improvement here, looking at the delta seems to be very far up as we ride on board with the 41 in P14. Up on his Delta again, shoots himself up to P8 into the top 10 of the grid. Definitely a good starting position there, as we've got a few more people on valid laps here, as the number 29 comes through to the bus stop again. Very big improvement on the Delta coming in for this one. Let's see how far Vince van Mervelde can get himself up the grid. Looking at P11, no improvement there. Very surprised. Up on his Delta, possibly invalidated his last lap as we turn back to the 119, heading through Blanchimont here towards the bus stop. Careful not to run too wide, possibly too wide there. Not sure if that was an invalidated lap. The flicks into the right, jumps a little bit over the curb, straightens it up, tucks it in for the left, and runs it out to the exit curb. A little bit of a tail happy slide there. Any improvement here? Stays P3, and I believe there's not many people left on their laps now. Looking down the board, not seeing a lot of green, seeing quite a fair bit of red here.
Here is Still Levinson. He'll be one of the last few cars to come across the line. And yes, I know what I said. And yes, I meant to say that. That car looks slightly unsettled for the 108, but looking to improve anywhere outside the bottom of the top 20. And he will do top 25. A nice pickup there on the final lap. All these runs do count coming to the line. Everybody that is coming to the line, except the one car I think coming right now, might actually still be on a valid lap. And just as I say that, the last car has also invalidated as far as I'm concerned. I might be being hoodwinked by the different colors. Jordan Daly in the 197, looking to improve from 35th, and that's a big old improvement, 25th place for the 197. John, that makes a huge difference from your starting position, starting 35th versus 25th.
Yeah, certainly at Spa, tricky, notorious turn one, very pinchy going into the hairpin at La Source. As far forward as you can be, basically, the less drama you're probably going to have to avoid. So, you know, if you're down in the 20s, it's going to be maybe a little bit ahead. If you're right down in the 30s, it's going to be quite a lot of cars ahead. Especially if people get squeezy towards the wall, towards the apex, make late lunges, it can end your race before it's kind of even started. So, definitely going to be a tricky one here as we look towards the grid here with the starting order. We've got Benjamin Harmon taking a pole position. Very good lap. The only driver, I believe, to hit the 219 barrier. Next up, we've got Polyakov in numbers P2. Going down the field. Again, Porsche's trumping the Lamborghinis here. The highest Lamborghini we've got is down in P5 for the 840. Ran a 220.400. And again, we've got some Porsche Cup cars tickling around the Lamborghini. So, Porsche Cup car may be more suited to Spa than the draggier Lamborghini. All those wings, canards and diffusers, possibly slowing it down in a straight line. Porsche with a very basic aero package, probably in comparison. Possibly a little bit quicker in a straight line. So, excited to see how this will go. Whether the Porsche will be better over the course of the race versus the Lamborghini is yet to be seen. Again, very big learning curve here for not only the drivers, but for us in the booth as well.
Certainly is going to be the case. And one thing that I noticed was Adam Dubiel. I think he qualified P5. He had the fastest first sector of everyone. And how interesting is that? 3 different purple sectors for 3 different cars. Polyakov having the fastest third sector, Heilman dominating in sector 2 is the difference, for me at least, in that race for the pole position. Just incredible stuff. And I'll say it again, we're learning just like everybody else is. I expected it to be a little closer, to be honest, between the ST and the Porsche Cup car, but there you have it. At least 4/10 in the bag for the Porsche Cup cars. John Dalton, this is normally the time where we would show you the championship points, but we don't have any, so we won't, so we can't. So we're going to move swiftly on. I want to talk about Benjamin Heilman for a second. Has the pole. He's in a car he loves at a place that he knows. How does he protect the lead with 35 plus cars trying to overtake him?
Certainly going to be a tricky one for Paul Benjamin at the front of the field. You know, long drag from where we start all the way up the hill, all the way up the Kemmel towards the top end of the circuit. Slipstreaming is going to be the thing here. So we might see a few drivers weaving about. Again, could cause a little bit of chaos if you're weaving about and not checking your mirrors properly. Going defensive towards the top of the camel is probably going to be the best bet, forcing any rivals round the long way. Notoriously tricky, even on cold tyres. Bear it in mind at the start of the race, Jesse, nobody's got tyre warmers on the grid. So everybody's going to be on slightly different temperatures, slightly different pressures, depending how you've been building them up throughout the course of the warm-up lap. So it's going to be very interesting to see these guys braking with a full fuel load in the front of the car at the top of the Kemmel Straight.
Keep in mind, everyone takes the Eau Rouge Radeon differently as well. The Porsche Cup car will take it differently than the ST, and let's not even talk about the Ferrari Challenge car, how that has to take Eau Rouge and Radeon, and not to even mention what happens once you get to the top of that particular corner. We've got our usual group of stewards in check for today, and I have a weird sneaking suspicion that we're going to need every last one of them. We thank them for their participation in today's race. 35 plus cars as we walk backwards through the grid. I didn't know Mawson could walk backwards and shoot the camera forward. That's very interesting.
Certainly very talented is our Ryan Mawson with the camera, moonwalking backwards up a hill, need I add. Very interesting to see.
Well, you learn something new every day, and we're going to learn just who the king of Spa is today. Heilman, it's hard to bet against him, John Dalton, but out of everyone you see here, who do you like for the win today overall?
I think my money is on Heilman at the front after racing him at Alton Park. Seeing the pace he had, he was by far the quickest of their lineup that they had in the car. Bearing in mind they had Mikael Schundstrom and Fabian Schmiedberger with them as well. Two very quick drivers in their own right, but Heilman was just in a different league of his own in the Cup car. Me and Tom had no answer at all for Heilman's pace. Every time he got in the car, the gap just slowly got bigger. Every time, you know, Mikael and Fabian got in the car, me and Tom could slightly equal them, and they didn't pull as much of a gap. But yeah, Stewie was just on absolute fire. So my money is on Benjamin here.
And for those of you that may have already noticed, there are a couple of custom liveries in the field today. The new cars, some of them easier to paint than the others, I've been told, but that has not deterred a couple of painters from getting out the old level and the brush and putting a nice livery on the car for today. Of course, they can change their livery mid-season, that's fine as well, but for the opening round, I was told by Mawson that there are 3 cars that have a custom livery on them. You may have spotted them as we have went down the grid for the first time. I agree with you, though, John Dalton. It's going to be very difficult for anyone to beat Benjamin Heilman. My biggest thing for Heilman today is he cannot beat himself, and that's something that is so easy to do around Spa-Francorchamps.
Certainly some very tricky corners on the circuit, Jesse. Eau Rouge and Radeon with the crest, and you know, not much front downforce on the Porsche. Could lift the nose, could get the rear out as you come over the crest. Could be a little bit lethal going through there. We've already seen in qualifying Pouhon being a very tricky set of corners. A little bit of oversteer for one of the drivers we rode on board with there. And again, Blanchimont, if you get that wrong, too many track cuts could land yourself in a penalty. And obviously with the Spa layout we use here, uses the endurance pits. So not only have you got to go through the F1 pits, you've also got to go all the way down the hill towards Radeon and Eau Rouge, and out you come. So very costly if you get a drive-through penalty or a stop-and-go penalty here.
Right, you are. Of course, there is a pit stop requirement today. You must come in 1 liter of fuel. As far as I'm concerned, no tire change required. In fact, a tire change might be detrimental to everyone out there today, but you never know. It is not required. 1 liter of fuel required, and like Dalton just said, it's basically a double pit lane, the longest or thereabout the longest in ACC. A speeding penalty here completely ruins your day. In fact, we see a lot of retirement for people that get a stop and go 30 for speeding in the pit lane, and they just retire the car because there sometimes is absolutely no coming back from an incident like that. Hello, everybody. For the very first time, I see you all in chat. We welcome you in to the very first round of the Challenge Cup here at Spa, wherever you are in the world. We hope that you're doing well, and thank you for spending a little bit of your Monday evening with us here on RCI TV. We invite you to like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the things. You may have noticed we have 3 of the Challenger Pack cars in this race. The 4th one, the BMW, that touring car is the Thursday champ. Thursday champ starts next week on the 14th. There is still time to go to racerci.com and sign up for that series. No matter what your skill level is, we have spaces for you. It's RCI's first touring car series on the platform. It's going to be pretty brilliant. And a big thank you to Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver61, Fanatec, and SimRacing.gp for their continued support. We'll talk more about those lovely folks after the race today. John Dalton, nerves a little bit, you would have to expect, firing off into the unknown.
Yeah, I'm super nervous for these guys. You know, formation laps are always the nerviest part of the race, even for myself. Always overthinking everything, thinking of every possibility, every scenario in your head that could play out going down into turn 1. It's going to be very tricky on these cold tyres, full fuel loads. Maybe these guys not done a lot of running on that. Could be a little bit into the unknown for them guys as well. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see these Porsche Cup cars. You know, you've got 4 strong Cup cars at the front, followed up by the Lamborghini behind them in P5. Another couple of Cup cars, another Lamborghini, another Cup car, another Lamborghini. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Lamborghinis move through the field compared to these Porsche Cup cars as we come down into the bus stop to Brest. The rolling start conditions now. Temperature looking very hot indeed, 28 air and 36 track. Not a lot of wind, so not going to have changing conditions as these guys speed up to try and get into their grid slots as we inch ever so closer towards the start of the race. Jesse, who's your money on to win?
Oh boy, I can't overlook Caracas in that second row, but you never know. If something happens up in front to Heilman, I wouldn't look past the 40 either. It's just so hard to tell, but I do think your winner comes from the front couple of rows. Of course, we do use the GT starting grid, the proper starting grid here at Spa for these cars, and it's a good thing too. 2x2 as far as the eye can see around the corner, and you're going to need every bit of space. Will they get 3 wide before they make it to Eau Rouge? I surely hope not. I hope they're single file. Otherwise, it could end in disaster. Here we go, folks. The Challenge Cup, round 1. The green flag is flying, and the 40 gets a nice start, but Heilman holding on the inside will take the run up the hill into P1. It looks decent for the first 10 or 12 cars. Right on the back is the 40. Heilman leading, but only just. It is a accordion effect behind them, but I think they just about did it. Look at this, 3 wide down into the 3rd turn.
Yeah, exactly as I thought it would play out with Heilman here, needing to go defensive to the top of the camel, and has allowed the green Porsche number 40 around the outside, but I don't think this is over yet. I don't think Benjamin's going to take this line down, as we see Caracas in the 119 behind as well, looking towards the outside into Bruxelles, going down into, I believe, the corner that has no name. Very easy to get track limits here. You're going to have to be very careful on your open lap as we see them all using extra curb and the AstroTurf there. Something you don't want to be doing. Let's pray that the cut detection hasn't flagged up for anything. But touch wood, I think everybody is through safely at the moment. I've not seen any yellows. I'm not seeing anybody lagging at the back of the field. So it's been a very clean start in a very mysterious conditions here, Jesse.
I thought Polyakov was dead to rights whenever Heilman had the inside going up through Radion. I thought that was it, but no, down the straight, Polyakov had the suck and got around the outside. That's all you got to do is stick it side by side, and he's done that, and it is a leading move. What an incredible job by the 40. That was Heilman in second. Caracas up to third. Adam Dubiel, remember, that qualified in fifth place. Up into fourth now. Morera in the 3-1-4 down a spot as well. Klaus Nyring in sixth. Adalbert Gertan, seventh. Ala Pitchik in eighth. Jarzabowski is 9, and Merveld in the top 10. We ride on board Jaroslav Roth in the 288, going around the outside of the Kieser, trying to get that spot away. He might have a chance, but I don't know if he's going to have it. They're side by side, but unfortunately, the final turn or the first turn, depending on how you categorize the track, is not in Roth's favor here. That was best case scenario for the start. I did not have that on my bingo card.
I certainly didn't either. I definitely had a multi-car pile-up going towards the top of the Kemmel when we saw the sea of colour coming around the kink before the straight. But seeing Heilman dropping back slowly from the front now down into P3, just noticed on the board. You see a car go very wide here.
Oh, easy.
Wide almost, coming back onto the field as we go 3 wide here up the Kemmel. Cup car on cup car action. Christopher Verstappen there in amongst the pack of 4. Back into 2 wide now as he goes towards the inside at the top into Lecum. We see somebody straight lining Lecum there ahead of Verstappen. Definitely a tricky corner, and they're still side by side coming into Bruxelles. Verstappen there tucks back in behind the P15. I don't think this man's done yet though. Definitely excited to see how far Verstappen can go from that P15 that he's qualified in.
Something else we didn't mention much at all is Jake Boswell here trying to work in space. We didn't talk about this, but it is worth mentioning now considering how well they handled that start. The raceability, John, of all these cars is way up there in comparison to what we previously had for ST and Porsche Cup. The raceability is so much better that you can go 2 wide, you can go side by side, you can hit curves, you can fight for position, brake a little bit late, you can do all the things you need to do to have a good fight. And I think a lot of that played into how good that start was. There was one car, and I believe it was a ST, that pitted at the end of lap 1. I didn't see them drop off the back of the pack before that, so either something happened in the chicane or that was their scheduled stop. Now, they do not have to come in again. That was inside the pit window, and I believe that's the 81 car that made that strategy, so pay attention to that. As far as I know, that car did not come in due to damage or contact or anything else. That might have been a very early scheduled stop by the 81. Get them out of traffic. We will keep you posted on that. Felipe Morera in the 3-1-4, trying to keep Klaus Nyring behind. It's a task easier said than done, but doing just well is Morera right now, holding on to that P5 spot.
Yeah, touching back on your point on the 81, Jesse, Hagstrom Vigershu in that car. We saw him a lot in the Asia Masters, pitted normally on lap 1 or 2 to get the clear air ahead of him to really start nailing in those lap times. So, like I say, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up as we see a wave of cars coming in. We've got number 5 of Bart Maturin, we've got Martin Marenkin, and we've got a few others towards the back of the field. The Norquist brothers are both in as well, so maybe everybody trying to get some clear air at the moment as we watch Heilman fighting with Zabal here in the Lamborghini. Heilman having an absolute stinker of a race so far, just slowly going backwards from that pole position lap he drilled in qualifying. It's great to see the Lamborghini kind of carving its way up the field now. Maybe over 1 lap, possibly not the best car to be in, but over a multitude of laps, maybe the one you want, maybe a little bit easier to drive. As you said, Jesse, in the opening stages of the broadcast about this driving more like a GT3 car, these giant wings, diffusers and canards all over the place on this, possibly might be slightly more user-friendly as we see Van Reveal there going very wide at Huon in P10, chasing down the back of 2 Lamborghinis. Again, going to be interesting to see this fight, how the Porsche compares to the Lambo. It looks like the Porsche has definitely got the legs in the corners. Towards corner exit though, a little bit shaky. Lamborghini definitely a little bit more stable. And it does seem the Porsche has the edge in the corners. Bit of a slipstream here. It's going to be Van Reveal as we ride on board with him, looking at the back of the Lamborghini of Jaroslawski going up to Ronchimon, pulling away slightly here with the slipstream ahead from the 41. Lamborghinis sticking together here, giving each other a little bit of a tow. Again, corners though, the Porsche seems to gain an awful lot going through any kind of bend. So coming into the bus stop, last of the late breakers, man revealed, looks towards the outside, tucking right up behind the Lamborghini there, for the right and the left. Look at the run he gets going through the mid-corner. That's very impressive from the Porsche.
That really is. I think it highlights the difference between the two cars there. That was excellently illustrated by you. In the twisty bits, the Porsche just absolutely dominates, but in a straight, the Lamborghini just sort of takes off with its more sophisticated aero, maybe a little bit more power, a little bit more grunt as well. And it all sort of comes together. We saw somebody in chat earlier mention that so the Porsche is quicker. Yes, in a qualifying sense, I suspect it is just a bit quicker. But in a practical sense, in a race, I think, John, I think you're right. I think they might be just about dead even.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. Personally, the Lamborghini probably is the easier car to drive consistently over a few more laps than the Porsches. At Alton Park, a couple of weeks ago, we had some very inconsistent laps. One lap you take the exact same line, you nail the throttle, and all of a sudden you're sideways coming out of a corner. The next lap you do the exact same thing and it sticks. So very, very strange indeed. As we flick back to the Vanderbilt battle here, it's very close coming down to the corner with no name. Vince up the inside there, contact behind between the 444 and the 296. We both of them got off very lightly with that one. Neither of them ended up in the wall, just massive amounts of oversteer. So very interesting fights coming through here. It's definitely looking a bit closer than I imagined, Jesse.
When you pin a car in that hairpin against the apex like that, you're sending a message. That message was received loud and clear and unappreciated. But excellent racing nonetheless between the two of them to settle that. A little bit of mild contact. I'd call that mild contact. I don't think the stewards would care anything about that. And they continue racing. Again, it goes back to the drivability of these cars. It's way up there in comparison to what we were dealing with last year. And you can do stuff like that. You can drive somebody hard and also trust them that they're going to be able to keep a handle on their race car. Go back to the fight for the top five. Morera still holds that position over Nyring. And Klaus Nyring trying very, very carefully trying to get that spot away. Of course, Benjamin Heilman, our pole sitter here today, has fallen back and forth, and I have a little bit of a theory. I think that car is on a completely different strategy than everybody else. Otherwise, I can't explain where the lack of speed is.
Do you think maybe Heilman's taken more fuel than everybody, just to drop that 1 litre in? Maybe everybody else is on half a tank or so, and they're going to fuel a little bit longer in their pit stops, or...
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. You don't drop that much pace, and Heilman has dropped a ton of pace. And you don't do that unless you're doing something strategically, and I suspect that is what he's doing. He is going to come in at the last second for a last splash and dash, if you will. And everybody else maybe not doing that. Maybe probably going to do the traditional pit stop, pit in the middle of the race, and then continue as per usual. We'll see when we hit the 30-minute mark in the race. We'll see if that's exactly what Benjamin's doing. But for right now, it just looks like he's dropping a ton in comparison to those around him. But I feel there might be more to it. And speaking of more to it,
super close here with passing for the lead here, Jesse. The 119 taking the place over the 40. Very clean move down the inside there. Again, the 40, like you say, Jesse, able to give it a run around the outside at least, to try and defend that position. The last update of ACC has really made it possible with changes to the aero maps of the car and obviously the offline grip values that are now in the game. It does make it easier to give your opponent that run for the money and try and put up a bit of a defense around the outside. Here, as we look towards the battle here for 14, 15, 16 and 17. Four cars all in a row headed up by what looks to be a Lamborghini with three angry Porsches chasing down behind it on the run up towards the final set of corners, as we see Jack Alexander here tucking in the back behind Steve Hughes, giving it a little bit of a bump draft here. We're going kind of NASCAR style at Spa tonight, it seems, with these guys in the Cup car. Certainly something you don't want to be doing at this kind of speed. could spell disaster for your opponent and for yourself if the stewards look into that and, you know, don't approve of it. As we look back towards Will Stevenson here in the Lamborghini, fighting with, I believe that's Jordan Daly, possibly? Or is it the car? It's Nico Kumpu, actually. Beg your pardon on that one. Down into the bus stop. Will Stevenson not able to do anything. Looks into the inside at La Source. Very late on the brakes there, maybe too late. Thought it was going to run at the back of Nico Kumpu there, heading down towards Rouge and Radion down the hill. A little bit of a gap between these two and the pack ahead, but again, if they work together, play it smart, they might be able to gain a little bit of ground on the guys ahead.
You alerted me to something that I hadn't been paying attention to, but was happening. You talked a little bit about Will Stevenson, talk about Daly as well. Remember, Jordan Daly qualified P25. They're up to 19th right now. Both those drivers getting a move on up inside the top 20. Martin Lawrence in the 171 has not fared nearly as well, P33, but they have, of course, done their pit stop. The leader of the cars that have stopped is Jaroslav Roth. We've got Bart Macha there, Schumann, Lawrence, Dozal, and Nordquist, Lindgren. All of those cars, you mentioned earlier, Vigascu and Nordquist had also pitted. These guys are done with pit lane for the day, no penalties. They do not have to come in again. The real question is, when does everybody else pit, and is pitting early the right strategy here?
So mixed classes here, different performance levels in the cars. We've seen obviously the Lambo being a little bit better in a straight line, the Porsche being a little bit better in the corners. If you were Hackstraw and Vigascu, I believe you qualified quite low down the order, considering how we saw him perform in Asia Masters. You just want to get out of that area. You don't want to be sandwiched between two cars fighting. You don't want to be, you know, stuck behind somebody that is punching a massive hole in the air, upsetting your handling, going through any of the corners. So dive yourself in, drop that 1 litre of fuel in, and get back on your way in some mega clean air to make up some ground. As we can see, I believe Peter Henneberg has also stopped early. He has come out behind Roth as we look back on board here with Jack Alexander into the bus stop, given Stephen Hughes in the number 7 as Alexander dives into the pit lane. Notoriously tight entrance to Spa here. Don't want to clip that red wall too much, and the line does come up very quickly indeed. So another Porsche coming into the pits. I think pitting early here, Jesse, does seem to be the favoured thing. A lot of people getting stuck behind Lamborghinis. They can't quite get past in a straight line, and Porsches, they can't quite get around in corners. Pitting early is the tactic a lot of drivers are taking up here.
I don't hate that strategy. If you're stuck behind a car, if you're in a group of cars, there really wasn't any carnage to start this race. So if you're in a pack of 35 cars, which everybody is, and you're stuck in the middle, maybe you are directly behind an ST that is a little quicker on the straight. You can't quite get around them. I don't hate that strategy. Come in and pit, get yourself out of that situation, and go ahead and complete your stop and start doing as best you can on your fuel load, quality laps, and see where you stand when everybody else comes in. I cannot overstate how clean that start really was. The sheet for stewarding is still completely clean. I can look into the steward's box and see that they're looking at several different incidences, but we've seen a couple of incidences so far, but it didn't seem like they were going to end up being anything but a racing incident. And just as I say that, commentators curse.
Classic commentator's curse there, as Will Stevenson runs himself a little bit wide on the Pouhon section. I did think maybe the stewards had fallen asleep, but as you say, they are busy looking at various incidents throughout the race so far. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't see too many penalties affecting people here. But yeah, very surprised on that start. To get that many cars through Spa cleanly with no incident that I personally saw on the map, yeah, outstanding job by these guys. It is really clear why they are in the top split of their game.
And it wasn't like they were laying over either, John. They were going at it. It was a change for the lead in the first couple of quarters. It was a change for third, fifth, sixth, and they were racing each other hard that first lap. So realistically, it's like you said, it's just the pro split. It's what you expect to see. You don't always see, if we're completely honest. but it's what you expect to see in the top split. We saw that here today, and we got a fantastic race. I'm actually kind of giddy. We got Adam DePeel, who is in third place. He's the leading ST. Jarzabowski is second in that class, but all the way down in 8th place, and all the Pitchick inside the top 10. So you got 3 STs inside the top 10. The rest are Porsches, and Joe McCauley is in the race.
Yeah, Joe McCauley down in P22. Believe a slight improvement on what he did start on. So if we ride on board here, the Porsche, we're just going to see, hopefully, if our logic was correct, the Ferrari just getting smaller and smaller as he goes into the distance through Radion and Eau Rouge up the top of the hill towards the Camel Straight. Again, the Ferrari should in theory disappear until we get to the top of the straight where we hit Les Combes, which is where the Ferrari should get a lot closer as we go through the S's at the top of the hill. Saying of stewards, we are finally seeing our first reports come through, Jesse, on that one, so good to know they're not asleep. We're looking at an incident on lap 1, turn 14, involving the 214 and the 256. A 15-second penalty, which I believe is Peter Henneberg in that one? 214, yep. 214 is Peter Henneberg. Unfortunately for him, he has already made his pit stop. So, as we said earlier at the beginning, Jesse, he's going to have to take another trip through the notorious lane that is the pits here at Spa. Very long layout with the F1 pits and the GT pits. Going down the stewards again, lap 1, turn 8, involving the 911 and the 21. Warning for the 911 on avoidable contact, hit the 21 in the rear. Another incident on lap 1, turn 19, involving the 108 and the 47. 47 hits the 108, but both carry on as before, so no further action there. Incident on lap 2, turn 1, involving the 171 and the 197. Racing incident on minor contact there. Incident on lap 2, turn 4, involving the 108 and the 69. A racing incident. Both cars go off track at Eau Rouge, but apparently just racing according to the stewards. We have another incident on lap 2, turn 4, involving the... No, sorry, I've just read that one. Pardon me. Lap 2, turn 6, involving the 911 and the 41. Another racing incident, just minor contact. Lap 2, turn 7, involving the 8 and the 747. Warning for the car 747. Avoidable contact, apparently on the 8. So, stewards have been quite busy, and it's not been maybe as clean as we thought, Jesse, at the start there.
Well, there was still no major calamities. I don't even recall Hindenburg having major contact with anybody, but the stewards definitely caught something there. Martin Lawrence fighting for P31 and just about gets it from Schumann, but only just a defensive line perhaps for Martin Lawrence for the next couple of corners, and now shakes Schumann a little bit and has sole possession of 31st place. But I think it was still clean. I think a lot of those contacts are minor things that show up on the report, but realistically, like the no further action racing incident, it wasn't too big of a deal. But the stewards have to look at each report that they receive and judge it based on what exactly happened. 9 times out of 10, though, it's going to be a racing incident. I will say that 15-second penalty surprised me simply because I didn't see any sort of issue with that. We don't have a replay of that, but certainly major contact there leading into a spin, so it wasn't completely clean, like you said, at least.
Yeah, certainly unfortunate for Peter Henneberg as we ride on board here with Benjamin Harman looking at the back of De Beel's Lamborghini here into the back end of the circuit, heading up towards the hill, towards the very fast left-handers. That is the launchman that leads to the bus stop. We're going to see the Lamborghini here slightly pull away, even though the Porsche's in the slipstream. That's an insane straight-line speed that Adam de Beel is showing here. So very clear why Heilmann is struggling to get past this Lamborghini. Both drivers there going very wide, hopefully not a score on their track cuts this evening. And Benjamin there closing right up on the brakes into the bus stop, setting himself back up behind De Beel's rear wing. But again, we come to the straightest part of the circuit, start-finish straight into La Source, and then down the hill to Eau Rouge and Radion. So we're going to see De Beel pull away again. Heilmann finding it very tricky to get past here as we flick back towards the back end of the grid here, where we've got all the guys that have pitted. We've got Christian Lindgren in the 33, with some more Swedish action ahead in the 127 Lamborghini of Nicholas Nordqvist. Again, two people that always have pitted quite early, both the Nordqvist brothers, along with Hagstrom Vigershu in the Asian Masters. We always saw them diving in on the opening laps to try and create this kind of clear air, as there we see Nordqvist leaving the door open in the second part of Huon, and Christian Lindgren saying thank you very much and sticking the 992 up the inside there, and a very clean pass indeed. So we see the Porsche there excelling in the corners compared to the Lamborghini. As we look back towards behind him, we've got Hagstrom Vigershu ahead in the purple and black Lamborghini with Jack Harvey behind him in the 159. Again, these guys getting very close indeed. Jack Harvey with a great run coming up the hill here on Hagstrom Vigershu. It makes it kind of seem like maybe Adam Dubel's Lamborghini is in a slightly lower aero trim than Hagstrom Vigershu's Lamborghini is. And the Porsche gaining quite a lot coming out onto the straight. And again, through Blanchimont, Porsche running wide, Lamborghini keeping it in between the white lines, looking towards the inside into the bus stop. Very late lunge there by Jack Harvey. Great move pulled off in the first part of the bus stop, clear way before even the second part of the bus stop there, as Vigershu does go backwards, unfortunately. Not a driver I expected to kind of go backwards, but it looked like he was jinking towards the inside as into La Source they go. As we flick back towards the battle here of Heilmann and Dubel. Again, two guys that have been locked bumper to bumper in this Sector 3. It seems Heilmann with the fastest Sector 2 in qualifying, I believe, really showing where his Porsche is stronger than Dubel's Lamborghini. But the Lamborghinis with the advantage through the straighter parts of this circuit, running very wide there, over the curb and over the AstroTurf. I really don't want to see these guys getting any track cut penalties today. It's going to be very costly if they do. Through the bus stop they go, Heilmann closing back up slightly as we see Nicholas Nordqvist here taking back the position on Christian Lindgren, but then Lindgren goes back through. Nordqvist overshooting Lecum slightly at the top of the hill, and this leaves him exposed to Jack Harvey behind, as we see Nordqvist go very defensive into Bruxelles. Harvey looking towards the outside, very close between these two. If Harvey can stick it here, the outside then becomes the inside into the corner with no name, and he has done it. That's an amazing move there, very clean, little to no contact there. Maybe Nordqvist struggling with the car slightly here.
Well, there's a couple of times in motor racing where I'm sure two drivers are mad at each other, but I think they're somewhat enjoying this, a little bit of back and forth here for the 33rd position in this case. But here's the thing, you don't really know where you're going to be. They may be battling for 33rd, 31st, whatever right now, but keep in mind they've pitted, so you're not quite sure where they're going to come out. This could be a top 20 fight later on at the end of the race. More cars continuing to come down the pit lane, and even still more battles in the pack. Will Stevenson has caught 14th place Nico Kumpu for that position. All that's left to do is get around him. On top of that, we've got more penalty reports that have come in. And 15-second penalty for Jake Boswell's 47 car for contact against the 69 position returned. That on lap 5, turn 1. And a 5-second penalty for car 427 for an overtake with contact position not returned. That on the very same lap and turn.
Quite a lot of race incidents as well above that. But again, it's great to see kind of these guys racing so closely, as Heilmann again is tucking in behind Dubel's Lamborghini.
Heilmann's picked his spot that he wants to make this pass on Adam. Adam's just not letting it happen.
I think so. Heilmann again very quick in the middle sector. Both drivers there running very wide through Blanchimont. Again, you want to be careful of these track limits because there's still 34 minutes to go. And if you're getting this kind of, aggressive with the limits this early on, could spell disaster for the final 5 to 10 minutes, when maybe you need a track cut limit just to get that extra edge on your rival.
No, you make a very good point, John, because normally with the 3 cars that we have here today, you would normally look at the Ferrari and say you're likely to get the track limits because it understeers a bit. I don't know if you've noticed, but that's when you're racing this close and this hard, especially the way that they're going at each other. I think that's the same for all of these cars because you can maximize your corner entry and exit so much now, and the curbs are almost an afterthought for the way a lot of these cars are tuned, it becomes a problem. And it's very important that we mention that, again, you get 3 track limit warnings. On the 4th time asking, you get a penalty. And that right there, case and point, you can't do that too many more times.
Yeah, certainly stewards and the penalty system are going to be looking very closely. However, speaking of looking very closely, I've spotted a lapped car that is ahead of Adam DeBille and Heilman here. So could this be the spanner in the works that maybe Benjamin needs to find a way past DeBille, as they probably will catch it maybe towards the end of Sector 2, beginning of Sector 3. So we know Heilman is very strong through this middle sector as we ride on board with him through the Pillon sections. 2 corners, very tricky corner to get right. Again, very easy to run wide and head up towards the hill here. Heilman making massive gains on the brakes, almost braking too late as we see him wrestling the steering wheel through the S's here, trying to maximise every possible inch on Adam DeBelle's Lamborghini. It's getting very tricky for Heilman. You can maybe see some frustration in his driving. You know he's going to tuck right up behind him on this straight, and then DeBelle is oh, a little bit of a bump there, and DeBelle is off into the wall. I think he skimmed the wall. Could the stewards be looking at this? Will Heilman back off slightly and maybe return the position? But looked like DeBelle there got a little bit out of shape. Heilman wasn't expecting it, and Heilman kept it planted where DeBelle needed to lift and lose a bit of momentum.
Let's see here. DeBelle got a little sideways, and did he get to the wall? Oh my goodness!
Don't believe there's much camo wrap left down the left side of that Lamborghini, as we do see DeBille peel into the pit lane to get that stop over and done with. Maybe feel like he's held up Heilman enough for the beginning, and going to take his stop, get himself into hopefully some clean air. Hopefully he doesn't get himself into the emerging pack that is going around Pillon at the moment, about 6 or 7 deep. If he comes out there, that's going to be very, very costly for some lap time. It's going to certainly slow him down as we look here for the battle of P9 and 10 with the 41 and the 296. Again, we're going to see the speed difference here of the Lamborghini and the Porsche heading up the hill towards the Kemmel Straight, cutting over that inside curb. Lots of opposite lock there for the 296. In 6th gear, you don't really want to be dabbing on the opposite lock. Very scary moment indeed, as we see Porsche maybe towards the end of the Kemmel does get slight legs on the Lamborghini. It does begin to close the gap. So again, we're seeing the Lamborghini excel in Sector 3 towards Longchamp and the bus stop, but towards the top of the Kemmel, the Porsche definitely does gain some ground in a slipstream. So very interesting to see here as we head into Bruxelles. Long sweeping, almost a double apex right. Lamborghini running it a little bit deep, the Porsche keeping it tucked in nice and tight. We know the Porsche is better in the corners, so this is where you're going to want to be trying to find your way past the 41. Again, tucking in behind on the run up to Pillon, not close enough to even look at making a move. We have seen the Lamborghinis have a little bit of trouble in Pillon. It's not the fastest car through Pillon, as we see there. The 296 gaining massive ground through the entry and the midpoint, and then the exit again. The Lamborghini just peels away slightly. It's a very, very cat and mouse game here we've got between the Porsches and the Lamborghinis, Jesse.
It's absolutely brilliant to see a head-to-head fight. Angel and Stroza trying their best to get around Pitchick. Pitchick doing their best to corner them in the corners and not give them any run. And of course on the straight, you would normally think it would be absolutely no contest, but it certainly seems that Stroza's car can keep up with the Lamborghini at bare minimum. Bart Macha in the pack of the cars that have pitted. He's got Alexander in front of him, who has Hindenburg in front of him, who has De Keyser in front of him, who has Verstappen. You get the point. The bottom half of the top 20, who have all pitted to this point, all very close together. Jaroslav Roth, the man we call Jersey in the 288 Porsche, is the leader of all cars that have pitted thus far. He is further up the road from this pack, but all of these drivers here could be fighting for a top 10 spot at the end of the day.
It's going to get very interesting to win this pack if we do see this continue. Like I say, Roth is miles up the road. He's just kind of got his skates on and definitely got it going. As we see here, Andy Boardman and Jordan Daly fighting for is essentially P13 on the class of the non-pitters. You see Andy Boardman try to go for the switchback here. Andy Boardman, again, a driver that showed great potential in the Asia Masters I watched on and commentated with Ryan Gill. Certainly a fantastic driver, a very clean racer, and always comes back very late in the race. Andy Boardman is one of those drivers that seems to play the long game. As I'm looking at the scoreboard here, and I'm seeing the 119 of Caracas looking down the order there. He's taking his pit stop along with Stephen Hughes and Will Stevenson again, so the leader has decided to pit kind of on the halfway mark, and gives the position up to number 40. See Harman again in second, and Herrera in P3 and 3 on 4. These guys looking very close, but again, not one of them giving an inch or a mile to the other, making it very tricky for Andy Boardman. Jordan Daly, a fantastic driver. I've raced with him in a few leagues and a few events before. Very good, fair driver, definitely understands racecraft and knows where to position the car in times of need. So it's not going to be an easy one for Boardman to get past. As I say, we've got Boswell behind with the 15-second penalty. Luckily for Boswell, he hasn't taken his stop yet, so he can serve that alongside his stop, unlike Peter Henneberg, who has to make another trip down pit lane. As we see,
this is
actually a big issue here into Arujan Radion, getting the jump on Jack Harvey, and I think they've made contact there. Harvey off to the left-hand side, possibly even into the wall there. Definitely not something you want to be seeing at the fastest point of the circuit. Very, very dangerous indeed. As we flick to the replay here, we see on board here with, I believe this is a slower, I don't know who this, yes, Jack Harvey there. Seemed to be driving a little bit slow, and then kind of checked up when he saw the back end of Vigashu in his face. So very strange there, definitely hit the wall. So not ideal for Harvey's. Probably going to have to take a stop to pit lane there. As we see, he does indeed jump into the pit lane, possibly for retirement there. Maybe too much damage to continue on bent steering at this late in the race with another trip down pit lane. On top of the damage being repaired, probably going to put him out of contention. So our first retiree of the night, I believe, Jesse.
Yeah, just about. And unfortunate that that happened there. Must have driven down the straight and realized that that car wasn't right, and has decided to retire the car as Harvey in the 159. Interesting things have occurred. Of course, this man, Gratis Caracas, in the 119, pitted from the lead of the race near the middle point just a lap or so ago, and that means that they've given up the lead. But is it a bit more dire than that? De Keyser in front of them, so is Verstappen and Roth all in front and have all completed their pit stop as well. So even if Caracas matriculates back to the front of this field, you could at best see them in P4. The fastest driver on the track is Caracas. Has a little bit of work to do here.
Definitely going to slow him down, picking his way through the guys that have already pitted. You know, the pace, like you say, on Caracas is the fastest on the field at the moment, so it's going to make it tricky. As we see Stephen Hughes there talking about that oversteer earlier, coming out slow corners, absolutely wrestling the car there. Went one way, went the other, back the other way again. Very dangerous getting close to those bollards on the inside as he attempted to pass Schumann, and a little bit of error wash there going up the hill, losing the front end completely, and just straight behind the top of the hill. Steve Hughes there, very, very racy indeed, but that characteristic oversteer nearly bit him very badly there, Jesse.
Yeah, it certainly could have done, and luckily the ability to save the car was there. Adam DeBeal trying to pick up a spot as well. Looks like they're going to get by Alexander's number 1 without too much in it. Adam DeBeal, of course, had that very wide off. I consulted with Mr. Ryan Mawson, the broadcaster, on if DeBeal got all the way to the wall or not, and we're in a consensus that he might have touched it. He didn't smack it, but he might have touched it ever so slightly. That car doesn't seem any worse for the wear, but the car behind him is as Alexander plants it into no name.
Certainly not something you want to be doing, and awkwardly wedged sideways from what we saw there as DeVille drove away into the distance. Luckily, nobody has collected Jack Alexander, and he is on his way as we watch a race replay here with Adam DeVille ahead, Jack Alexander behind, tips it into the no-name corner. Looks at a little bit of curve, maybe jumps on the power too early, catches the rear wheel on the AstroTurf, and grip just kind of went from underneath him. nosed it into the wall, and a very kind of lethal place to be stopped sideways on a corner exit. You know, typically very close, these guys coming past. You know, you're nailing it very early in that corner to get the massive rundown to pull on. So if you suddenly see a Porsche parked lengthways across the circuit in front of you, you're going to have to back out and try and avoid him. And you've not got a lot of space to the right, and you've got a ton of space to the left. But with the car being on the right-hand side of the circuit, it's hard to hoik it back the other way to get around him. As we look here towards the P17-18 fight between Christopher Streppen and the number 8 going into what is essentially the first corner. You're applying it to the Formula 1 layout of La Source, heading down towards Eau Rouge and Radion. Can they get any kind of slipstream off of each other? You know, you're going to see Caracas drive away into the distance now to try and catch the 288 of Roth. Quite a way up the road. Roth is about halfway up the Kemmel on the track map, so a big gap to close there, as I have noticed that Jake Boswell has unfortunately been given a drive-through penalty. I'm not sure what for. We are seeing a few stewards reports coming in, so we're going to have to skim down the list to see the reasoning for that one, unless you've spotted it, Jesse.
Yeah, we went over that a little bit ago. Oh, the drive-through penalty, though, we have not.
Yeah, he had a 15-second penalty.
Yes,
earlier.
indeed. Well, you are 100% correct in that aspect. First of all, there's a warning for car 67 for avoidable contact with the 340. Racing incident between the 7 and the 1. A racing incident between the 21 and the 911. No further action between the 108 and the 256. Racing incident between the 36 and the 911. Racing incident between the 171 and the 222. And a drive-through for Jake Boswell for taking out the 427, position not returned. That on lap 9, turn 14.
Certainly not something you want to be picking up, especially if you've not done your pit stop already. You'd have to make a special trip all the way through the F1 and the GT pits layout. Just watching out of the window, Jack Alexander has some big front-end issues with that car now. After nosing it into the wall at No Name, he has got buckets of understeer going through the same turn now, so we're going to probably see him slip back and back, as Hedgman Vigashew is the next one down in the line. As we watch here, Vince van Mervelde in the 29 Porsche hunting down P4. Again, these guys are yet to pit, so it could be won or lost in the pit lane. Because I believe we have a bit of a timing glitch. Vince is showing P4 on the left, but P5 in the bottom right. Trying to catch, I believe this is Klaus Nyring on the road here. It's not. We have a slight timing glitch here, as I'm not sure what's happened here.
I'm not entirely sure either, but it should sort itself out here when they get to a timing loop, at least you hope. But otherwise, you can visually see that Ertan is actually in P4. And I wonder if maybe that was a pass that had just occurred. But either way, visually, you can see that Jake Boswell is in as his day goes completely sour. Like you said, he's got to serve that drive-through, which he just has done. And he's going to have to make another pit stop for his mandatory stop, in which he will serve an additional 15-second penalty. It's all gone wrong for the 47 thus far.
Unfortunate. Jake being what I class as, you know, a very good racer. I've had fights with him in various endurance races along the way. So yeah, it's very odd to see him make these kinds of mistakes. But again, unfamiliar territory. New cars, everybody is expected to make a few while they're adjusting themselves to this kind of race format of having cup cars of Porsche and cup cars of Lamborghini on the same circuit.
Most of the cars have completed their pit stop to this point. There are several cars that have not. Will Stevenson continuing to fight for a decent spot here. Trying to stay just in front of Dvorak, it looks like.
You've certainly seen these guys battling race, I believe. I think they even came into the pits and joined to each other. So, yeah, very tricky move for Will Stevenson to make as we look back here towards Nicholas Nordqvist battling with the 444 through corner. Notoriously hard corner for the Lamborghinis. Seeing time and time again people struggling to get through there safely. running wide, kind of understeering on entry. It's very strange to watch, but it must be something to do with the aero balance these cars run, as they are chasing down in the pack of 3 that they're in. Jack Alexander, who we did see nose into the wall at No Name earlier, so he's going to be nursing a very struggling cup car with very scrubbing front tyres. So don't expect to see Jack last much longer. As we flick back towards the front here, we've got Andy Boardman and Jordan Daly still locked bumper to bumper, going through Les Combes at the top of the hill. Andy Boardman there getting very close to the back of Daly, maybe a little mistake as he came out of Les Combes down to Bruxelles. Again, Daly turning in early, trailing it all the way into the inside, making it very tricky for Andy Boardman to even get a gap. As we flick to the left into No Name, again locked bumper to bumper, we see Boardman going slightly wider than Daly. Hopefully he's still got a few track limits to play with. Hopefully maybe lift it off so you can get the cut detected down into Pouon, still nose to tail. I think this is going to be a very hard fight for Boardman to take the Daly, and this one could be won possibly in the pit lane.
It very well could be. I don't know if they're going to settle it on the racetrack. These two know each other, by the way, Daly and Boardman, and they race each other very hard. And it's been some very fantastic racing over the last year or two between those two. Adam DeBeal, who had a 1 minute 55 pit stop, something like that, and we thought that that was long, but then again, Caracas had a similar pit stop. Oh no, and he's been spun! Adam DeBeal has been spun. Was that Hughes? Unknown who that was. But
it was Hughes.
Was it Dizal in the 191? Either way, Adam DeBeal has been spun, and that has turned a already frustrating second half of the race into an almost nightmare now.
Stewards will probably be looking at that one quite closely. Again, could see some penalties come through very late in the race, although it won't make up for the time loss that Adam DeVille has suffered. We look here to Benjamin Schumann. Finally, I think Bart Matcher has got past Schumann, and Steve Hughes behind again has dropped very far back indeed. We did see these two battling very closely coming out of La Source only a few laps ago, so maybe Steve Hughes not with the same kind of pace that Schumann is showing, as he runs very wide there, past the curb, past the AstroTurf, and even onto the extra bit of tarmac around the outside. Something you need to be careful of, Schumann. Don't want to be getting a track limits drive-through at this stage of the race, as we see Caracas here has caught the back of essentially the leader of Roth. I don't know if he oversteered there, but yeah, very sharp dart to the right. Definitely not going to be the best run down to Erusian and Radion, as we see these guys bumper to bumper. Caracas there probably thinking better than to make it too wide in a cup car with little downforce. He's going to use the slipstream coming up the Camel as we ride on board. Going to see hopefully Caracas jink to the right, or is Roth going to go defensive? Roth doesn't even put up a fight. He knows probably they're in a completely different league, and Caracas there passed before the braking zone even happened. So I think Roth there probably lifted off, gave him the position, and minimized his time loss rather than fighting with Caracas. Having a longer fight, allowing Verstappen behind to catch up, as we see Jordan Daly here leaving the pits in P22, I believe, according to the little overlay in the bottom right. Live timing there taking a little while to catch up, so he's ended up behind Adam DeBeal. A couple less cars for DeBeal to pass on the circuit, but DeBeal is going to be very fired up now on a comeback drive, I feel, as we look towards the 296 behind the 747 of Verstappen, coming down into Pouon. Verstappen, again, not an easy driver to fight. He does make it very tricky. He is very defensive. He knows where to place the car, knows how to make it awkward for yourself, and he knows how to hold on to his position. So don't expect this one to be an easy fight for the 296 at all.
It certainly will not be. Top 9 cars have yet to pit. Polyakov in the 40 has made their mandatory stop. All good there. And they are the only car in front of Caracas for what we suspect to be the overall lead of this race. Polyakov had a very quick pit stop. Caracas did not, and that's why we are in this position. Of course, Caracas had to get by Verstappen, Roth, and now Polyakov for the win of this race. We suspect, but we're not entirely sure, what everyone else up front's going to do. Andy Boardman's in a lap ago. Jordan Daly was in. Bart Macha fighting Schumann again for P16. Macha looking around the outside, doesn't have the overlap, will fall back in line, maybe try the under or the over if it's presented. It is not. So single file again as they will try and make that position change happen at some point. Bart Macha looks to, at this point, to just have a little bit more grip, speed, whatever it may be, in relation to Schumann in front. We documented Adam Dubil's day and how frustrating it's been for them. I've just noticed, is Benjamin Heilman the one leading this race?
Technically, Heilman is leading, however, he does still have that pit stop to make. So, like I say, he thought might have been on a different strategy. We are seeing Heilman go quite long here. We've still got 11 and a half minutes of the pit window to go. So again, that's still plenty of time for Heilman to make a stop. As we see here, Schumann going defensive on Macha coming up towards the top of the hill at Kemmel into Lecum, making it very tricky for these guys. Again, I'm sure Schumann was behind Macha earlier, so I don't know how he's found his way past him again. As we flick back towards Will Stevenson here in the slipstream of the Ferrari, who is again slipstreaming, I believe that's a Porsche head. Porsche stays to the right, kind of tries to make it awkward for Joe McCauley. I'm not sure if these guys are in position or if this is a lap car, but one of our very eagle-eyed viewers, Stephen in chat, did notice that Joe McCauley was in the top 10 before the pit stops, so he did find his way up the field, but again the stop drags him back down as Will Stevenson sticked it to the inside of Joe McCauley. Contact there, wheel to wheel. Joe McCauley running very wide indeed. Another one for the stewards to be looking at. Possibly McCauley not expecting the Lamborghini to try and fire up the inside. McCauley possibly having to brake quite early and almost trail brake the car into Bruxelles to kind of get it towards the inside there. So very strange scenes we're getting as we cam backwards to Hagstrom Vigashue. If you remember, he was one of the early adopters of the pit stops on lap 1 or 2, we believe, Jesse. I didn't quite see when, but it was super early in the race. He only managed to claw his way back to P26, so maybe not the best strategy to have here at Spa. He does find himself behind the 444 heading up towards Longchamp on that one, with Ostrich ahead of him and Andy Boardman ahead of them again in the red car. Got a bit of a Lamborghini train going down this end of the field, so making it very close indeed as we see the 444 look to the inside of the 69 of Andy Boardman. Not enough space there as they make it on the anchors into the bus stop. Very different lines we're seeing there, 4 cars going through, all on very different trajectories, so very interesting to see how each of these guys is making their Lamborghini work.
Well, because you trying to hang on to the position that they have. Matter of fact, everybody out there trying to do that. Ostrauch here trying to take one away from Boardman. Boardman gets a poor exit out of 1, and they're going to be side by side. Folks, you don't want to be too wide into Eau Rouge, and they finally get it sorted. Ostrauch will take that position, surrendered by Andy Boardman. And sometimes discretion is the better part of valor, and it certainly was there rather than trying to make that work. A defensive move from Boardman as Vigashue tries to go around the outside. Corner will go away from them, but if Vigashue can hold on, they will have that position and do. As Ostrauch continues to guard them in front, we can see Alexander in front of them trying to make that position work. William Stevenson up in 29th, still racing the 64. Quite hard, I might add.
Definitely so. Still battles aplenty up and down the grid. We're not seeing these guys easing off at all in these later stages. They are locked bumper to bumper, still trying to gain every little bit of ground they can, as we see both of them there using plenty of the AstroTurf in no name. As we look towards Heilman here, he has finally made his stop with 8 minutes on the clock to go. So certainly a very late pitter, and also in comes Ertan there. So it's going to be interesting to see where these guys come out, and we still have a couple more cars ahead of them that are still yet to pit 5, I believe, and 2 still behind. So again, still a few more stops to make, still a few more positions to shuffle around as we flick back to Schumann and Matcha here. Again, still locked in their little fight. I'm noticing down the grid, Jesse, there's constant battles between the same people. It seems Matcha and Schumann have been on a fight. It seems, you know, Stevenson has always been in a fight with somebody down the grid. It seems we've got the Swedes of Nordqvist and Hagstrom Vigershu locked in their little battle as well. So it's proved to be some very close racing in what I thought would be a very mixed category of cars, as 2 wide into Eau Rouge and Radion go Bart Matcha and Schumann. Matcha probably thinking the better of that one and backing out. As you say, Jesse, discretion is probably the best thing you can do there as you get the slipstream all the way up the hill onto the Kemmel Straight, as we see Matcha making full advantage of that, really shaving the rear bumper off the back of Schumann as last of the late breakers into the braking zone. Schumann on the inside, that then becomes the outside if Matcha can stick it. He does do so. I think they bumped wheels there. Schumann going a little bit wide. Matcha went to turn in, had to straighten the wheel up to allow Schumann the space as we go down the hill into Bruxelles. This is absolutely close racing, Jesse, in these cup cars. Matcha running a little bit wider, probably trying to get the better drive of the corner into No Name, but Schumann keeping it tight with a clean exit has allowed him ahead of Matcha again. Matcha not an easy driver to pass in my experience. He is one to put up a good fight, so I think this is going to be a very good battle indeed, as Matcha tries to put the inside of his Porsche down the inside into Pillon. Not a place you can really lunge on that one, Jesse. You know, not much of a braking zone. It's a quick dab of the brakes just to get the nose pitched in, down a gear and then back on the power again as we come up to the S's. Again, 2 very different lines from 2 very different drivers. Schumann's going to be constantly looking in his mirrors at Matcha's Porsche, kind of lunging closer and getting a little bit further away, as Matcha's going to have the slipstream up the hill towards Blanchimont and the bus stop. So again, potential passing place into the bus stop. This is turning into a very close fight indeed as we flick back down the grid to watch, I believe this is the 296 and the number 8 here into the bus stop. This is what potentially Schumann and Matcha could end up doing, as I've just seen a drive-through pop through for the 191 with 6 minutes to go in the race. Not something you want to be receiving this late on, Jesse.
No, it's sure not. Before we get to that, just quickly, Benjamin Heilman, who qualified on pole, dropped back almost immediately. A little bump there in Estroza, and the thing that I'm pointing out is Heilman pitted very late. Now, they dropped back on the start. We theorized that maybe it was a fuel load issue where everybody else that they were racing against maybe was on half fuel or fueled somewhat leaner than Heilman was, because at the pace that Heilman fell back and at the ease that he was passed, he wasn't fighting realistically hard to keep those positions. He did come back through a couple, mind you. I feel like this was his strategy, and now Benjamin Heilman is the leader on the road of the cars that have pitted. The top 5 have still yet to pit. Well, Jakob is behind Benjamin Heilman. Heilman leads the race of the cars that have pitted. Bart Matcha doesn't care anything about that, as we're going to go for round 2, I think, now.
Yeah, definitely round 2, almost a mirror image of what we saw last lap there. Matcha trying to find the outside line around Schumann. Schumann there getting a little bit oversteery. Is it going to be enough to allow Matcha to pull alongside into Pillon? He looks down the inside, he thinks about it. Again, not much of a braking zone, as I said, as Matcha tiling in the opposite lock there, getting very loose. Maybe a little bit of error wash of what little error this Porsche does generate here into the S's. Matcha constantly kind of jinging to the right almost to say, I'm still here, you still want to be careful of me, as big armfuls of opposite lock as we see these guys towards the end of their tyres now. It's going to certainly be quite a slidey car as the fuel drops out of the front end of the Porsche as well. Typically becomes very understeery towards the end of the stint. It does kind of upset the balance of the car, so again, that's something you guys at home might want to consider if you're pitching an hour's race or any kind of endurance. Towards the end, it will get very understeery on the front. Might be worth running an extra 10 litres of fuel or so just to keep the front nose in check, and fueling a little bit heavier there as we look back towards Adam DeBille here. on Stephen Hughes into the bus stop. DeBale on the outside, Hughes on the inside. And nothing you can really do into the bus stop on the outside. Inside line is always superior there. So DeBale probably going to look to use the straight line ability of that Lamborghini. Coming down into La Source. DeBale pulling out towards the inside of Hughes. Hughes not giving him a lot of room there. And again, side by side as they come out the turn. Pretty close. Pretty close. I think they even rubbed there, possibly Jesse. Coming down the hill towards Orange and Radion. DeBale thinks about it. He's thinking about it, but he thinks wiser. Pulls back in behind Hughes. Probably going to use the slipstream as he comes over the top of the hill into the Camels. We ride on board here with Adam DeBale from the passenger seat. Hughes takes that instant defensive line towards the right-hand side. We have seen the outside line work very well here, but again, DeBale's Lamborghini is set up very trim on the aero. It seems he's past him before he even gets to the braking zone, Jesse.
That was an excellent pass. I was just laughing at myself. Drivers recognize drivers, and we had an anime reaction to Adam DeBale there. We had the same exact thought. Top 10 anime betrayals coming at you next week. But talking about those penalty reports, we do have the outcomes of all the ones that have occurred thus far. And you will remember some time ago when Benjamin Heilman had contact with Adam DeBale that sent DeBale off the track a little bit. That turned out to be no further action. The stewards found that the 840 slowed slightly to catch an oversteer, which led to unavoidable contact with the 796. Nobody deemed at fault for that accident. No further action between the 214 and the 1. I think we saw that contact as well. No further action between the 8 and the 119. We saw that one as well. A racing incident involving car number 7 with minor contact, hard racing. Warning for car 29 for forcing another car off track, but the position was returned to the 911. No further action between the 747 and the 8. A drive-through for car 191 for taking out car 840. I feel like we all kind of saw that coming. We'll get back to that. No further action between the 5 and the 222. A racing incident between the 81 with minor contact. A 5-second penalty for car 108 for an aggressive overtake on the 123. And a racing incident between 840 and 191. Going back to the drive-through for 191 for turning the 840, I felt like we both saw that coming. John, thoughts?
Yeah, certainly. Stewart's looking very keenly at that one. It's definitely not something you want to be doing at all in a race if you can help it. But again, these things do happen as the last round of the pit stops has cycled through finally, Jesse, and we do see Heilman out in front. Polikov 1.4 seconds behind. So don't believe this fight is going to be over yet with the, the 40 of Polikov did stick it to the Heilman 796 car at the beginning, as we see another change of position here on the Cup car on Christian Lindgren. Possibly not somewhere where you want to be passing, as these guys might make it too wide into Orange and Radion. They do, and they bump wheels, and Hagstrom Vigashu there behind, having to take avoiding action over the top of the hill there. As is that Jordan? That's not Jordan Daly. Sorry, that's 444 of Ostrauch sailing off into the distance after that little bump. Stewards maybe, possibly eagle-eyed on that one. We'll wait to see if anything comes of that. As Nicholas Nordquist here comes under fire from another Porsche. I'm not too sure who that is. The timing seems to be a bit skewed at the moment. Is that Lindgren actually?
It's either Lindgren or Boardman.
Yeah,
it's one of the two.
It is
Lindgren as well.
Lindgren, Boardman ahead in the Lamborghini there.
Very close racing here in the final couple of seconds of the race. The pit window closed. Everybody has done their mandatory stop either way. And what a race this has been for so many cars. Folks, if you do not own this particular piece of DLC, what more do we have to show you? You can do this. You can do this. This is great. These are not GT3 cars. These are challenge cars, and they're racing this close and this well together. Benjamin Heilman took the pole position from the race, and he lost it almost immediately, but it was all in the cards as Benjamin Heilman comes all the way back to win it in the 796. The opening round of the Challenge Cup goes to Benjamin Heilman.
Superb drive from Heilman there. I'd say at the start he did appear to go backwards, but something in that strategy did pull it back from him. As we look down the grid here, Bart, Matcha and Schumann has finally settled itself, with Matcha coming out on top, although Schumann towards the inside of the exit of the bus stop there. Very weird place to be, so maybe a little bit of tangling has happened there. Something for the stewards possibly to look into there. Bigashew and Boardman still in their little fight there in the just outside of the top 20. Nicholas Nordquist coming across the line in P24. Jesse, the early pitters didn't seem to benefit that well today.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring that up, John, because I asked you very early in this race, what do you think about that strategy? I think if you're mired deep in traffic and you don't think you could get by the car in earnest fairly quickly, I think it was a good idea. But the winning strategy, more often than not, in ACC these days, is pit nearly as late as you can, or at bare minimum in the middle of the race. You cannot avoid battles in ACC and get away with it, as it turns out. Sometimes you just got to fight your own battles, as it turns out. Final thought of the day, perhaps, there.
Yeah, certainly so. Something for the drivers to maybe be looking back at that did pit early, possibly thinking maybe we'll pit halfway through or do a Heilman and pit right at the end of the window next time out. As we see Jake Boswell here, absolutely miserable day filled with penalties. It's going to be one to forget for this guy today, unfortunately, Jesse.
Yeah, he finished the race, though, and that's the important thing. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? And you never know. And to finish is kind of half the battle here. And, well, he's not quite at the line yet, Jake. Come on. And now we're at the line.
There we go.
It also helps to have a sense of humor as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the race may be over, but we still have work to do. We're joined by race winner Benjamin Heilman. Benjamin Heilman, what was your strategy today, and how did you make that work for you?
Well, first of all, I don't know how at the start I lost so many positions instantly. Like the Polyakov was so fast up Urush, so he could pass me directly, and then of course I lost the position to Caracas as well. And then for some reason in lap 3, Dubiel just flew past me. Like I didn't even have him on my radar, and then apparently he was that close that he just flew by. And I guess you saw what happened 20-30 minutes after that, where I just couldn't catch him at all on the straights and then stuck behind him through the slower corners. I think I could have kept pace with the two Porsches ahead, but I just couldn't get by, and then very unfortunate that I hit him in the back. And then I actually don't know how I won, because I know that Polyakov and Caracas pitted very early, so my hope was that they would be stuck in traffic. But I would have expected to come out like just behind them, because I was about 7 seconds behind them when they pit. And yeah, apparently Caracas had some issues in the pits or a lot of traffic, so I'm very wet and I'm very happy I won.
Yeah, congratulations there, Stewie. Looking down the chat box in game, it appears Caracas thought that he had to make a mandatory 25-second stop, so possibly misread the rule book there.
Okay.
So instead of dropping the 1 litre, possibly took tyres and the 1 litre, which would have put him over the 25.
In Caracas's defense, he races a lot in RCI, and we do run championships weekly that require that. This is not one of those championships, and it will be a story of what might have been. Very quickly, the final running order, the podium positions for all of the classes: Benjamin Heilman over Polyakov, and Caracas, your top 3 in Porsche Cup. Ala Pitchik won it in the Lamborghini ST class over Nico Kumpu and Adam Dubiel. And our surprise winner in the Ferrari today, Joe McCauley. I would have never called Joe winning in that class. Very quickly, Stewie, one more thing sets you up nicely for the rest of this championship. You love the Porsche. I assume you love the new Porsche, the 992 as well. You're looking really good for the rest of the champ now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to expect from Spa, because I knew that comparing to like alien times, I was still far off, and then just be maybe 1 or 2 tenths off pace from Caracas, who is definitely faster than me. I am happy with that, and I'm confident for Olten, because we did the 9-hour Olten race there, and I know how the car works there. It's definitely easier than here on Spa, so yeah, I'm pretty optimistic.
Certainly some good pace from that race on you, Stewie, last time we raced at Alton Park. So very excited to see what you can do there. It's going to be definitely a very good season indeed for you.
Well, it's a fantastic race all around. There were significant penalties, we'll call them, but not nearly as drastic as we thought for a 35 plus car field. I am actually sort of sad now that I'm going to not be back in the booth with you and John and Ryan next week. Ryan Gill will be back for his regular assignment. And John, I just hope that every race is as good as this was.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be some very close racing all season, if it is. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the other circuits bring. Alton Park, we saw obviously the Porsche very strong there when we drove in the 9 hours. So to see how the Lamborghini is going to compare, we saw here at Spa, Lamborghini's very strong on the straight, but not so strong in the corners. And Alton Park doesn't really have much of a straight. It's a lot of chicanes and a lot of twisties. So I'm expecting the Porsche to excel when we go towards that round.
Well, winner in the ST class today, Ala Pitchik. Pitchik, you waited around all race long. The race came to you, and you got the win today. I think Pitchik's having an issue with his audio device. We'll give him a second on that and try to bring you that interview. But for the moment, just want to thank our partners, racedepartment.com, your source of sim racing information, AK Informatica for providing our server solutions. Driver61, did you know you can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to driver61.com and using our discount code link in the description? Driver coaching can make you a better and faster sim racing driver. Fanatec.com, you can use our affiliate link when making purchases on quality sim racing hardware at fanatec.com. Doesn't cost you a single thing, and it may help us with things like server costs in the future. Yes, Pitchik, we can hear you. And simracing.gp. Tired of the pub racing scene or just can't get enough sim racing? Join simracing.gp. Join a community. Signing up is completely free, and you will not regret it. We are here with Ala Pitchik, who won in the ST class. Pitchik, everything I said still stands. You waited around all day. You had a very fast car, and in the wind, you ended up being the first across the post in your Lamborghini. Tell us about your day.
Oh, it was very tough. Porsche was very fast through the corners, but Lamborghini was decent on the straight line. But I think my success is because of different pit strategy. I decided to not to change tires, just to splash and dash at the end.
Well, were you surprised at all that you happened to be P1 in your class after all? Were you aware of anything going on with the 840?
No, I don't know what's happened.
He had a, we'll call it a rough day. He ended up P3 in the category. But what was your day like from your perspective, racing a lot of Porsches, I assume?
Oh, frankly speaking, I don't know how this champ will go on, because there are a lot of twisty tracks, and I think that Porsche are very fast, will be very fast on that track. But I try to win my class at least.
Well, an excellent day. Ala Pitchik, always a contender no matter what car he's in. Today just happened to be an ST. Congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that's just going to about do it for us today. It was about a picturesque start to a championship as you could ever want it to be. And of course, the other car, the fourth car in the Challenger pack, is in the Thursday championship, the BMW touring car. That championship starts on the 14th. You still got about a week to sign up and pre-queue. Doesn't matter what skill level you have. We have a split for you. Please queue up for that race. We've already got a full grid, but we could have multiple splits for that. And we would love to have you just a week away from starting that championship. We'll be back with you on Wednesday for the Diamond Drive Cup. Friday, of course, for GT3 Fridays, the Sprint Championship. And this weekend, round 3 of the RCI 2022 World Tour. Everybody that's here today will be here, and more so for that very long 8 hours of Laguna Seca endurance race, qualifying a huge surprise last weekend. You will never believe who qualified on pole for that race, because I guarantee you it isn't the car you were thinking it was. And of course, well, I won't be here, but Ryan Gill, John Dalton, and Ryan Mawson will bring you round two from the Challenge Cup in 1 week's time. On behalf of everybody here at RCI, we thank you for watching. From the broadcast team, the admins, and the stewards, we thank you and have a good night.